After this third day, one can notice that Tricky was changing himself. So see this paragraph which shows what kind of changes has come over Tricky. From then on, his progress was rapid. Now, what kind of progress? Progress of recovering and becoming normal. He had no medicinal treatment of any kind, but all day he ran about with the dogs. See, Ricky was taken to the hospital. He has to be hospitalized. He has to be kept under observation. So a dog is brought over there in a surgery. What one feels is that he would be given some kind of medicine, some kind of different treatment through which he would recover. But this was not so in the case of Ricky. Actually, he was put with other dogs and he was being there with them and enjoying full day, joining in their friendly scrimmages. Now, other dogs who were with him, these dogs were completely different from what Ricky was. And the difference between them was these dogs were very rough. And as it is written, their friendly scrimmages means their friendly, rough way of behaving. He discovered the joys of being bowled over, tramped on, and squashed every few minutes. So how was Treaty treated by other dogs? Others dog, Other dogs used to come and they used to board over him. Supposing a Tricky standing over there, they will jump over him. They would tramp on him. They might put their foot on him and then go on the other side. Sometimes Tricky was even squashed. Okay, so he was pressed hard also. But what was the reaction of Tricky? He was not crying, he was not angry, but he discovered that there is a joy, there is a happiness of being bowled over by someone, being tramped by someone, or being squashed by someone every few minutes. So this went on for an entire day. He became an accepted member of the gang. See, the word that has been used for that pack of dogs, that they have their gang, they have their group. And with passage of time, Tricky also became part of their gang, their group. And unlikely means not like others, he was a silky little object among the shaggy crew. This shaggy means again very rough. So this crew or this group was very shaggy, they were very rough. And in that group, there was Tricky. And what was the physical features of Tricky? Tricky was very little, very small, and he was very silky from his appearance or from his hide, that is the body. So he was like a little silky object that was always around him or always in between those shaggy crew, that rough crew of dogs. Fighting like a tiger for his share at meal times. So Tricky has also learned that when it is meal time and when the ball is there and in the bowl you have a food, like other dogs are running, he also started running during the meal times. Okay, and he fought with others to have his part of meal like home, like a tiger, and hunting rats in the old hen house at night. Okay, so nearby there is an old hen house. Over there now rats are roaming. So these dogs went over there to hunt rats. Okay, they hunt the rats and they eat rats. So Tricky also followed them and have been with them always. He had never had such a time in his life. Okay, Tricky has never had such a good time in his life because he was always surrounded by human beings. This is the time he has got to spend with other dogs and to learn new tricks, what these dogs were doing every day to make their life happy and how they used to enjoy themselves. Next paragraph. All the while, Mrs. Pumphrey hovered anxiously in the background. See, we completely forgot about Mrs. Pumphrey. Let us see what's going on in her life because she is so much attached to Tricky that she might be having a very hard time. So, Mrs. Pumphrey was hovered anxiously in the background. To hover means to be around someone continuously. So in the background, she was continuously, torturing the doctor or calling her and asking about what is happening. So ringing a dozen times a day. In a day, she used to ring a dozen times, 12 times a day for the latest bulletins. Bulletins means news. Okay, to know the latest news of Ricky, what he is doing, what is he wearing, what he ate, what is happening to him, is he all right or not. So to get the latest news of Ricky, she called doctor for almost 12 times a day. I dodged the questions about whether his cushions were being turned regularly. See, I dodged means I faced it. The doctor faced what kind of questions by Mrs. Pumphrey, that the cushions that we have given, okay, the pillows that we have given for Tricky, were they being turned regularly? Okay, being turned regularly means I hope you are not changing them every now and then. You have been giving him new cushions every time or washing them and putting it proper. or his correct coat worn according to the weather. As we know, before leaving the house, Tricky was also given so many clothes by Mrs. Pumphrey. So Mrs. Pumphrey was also asking such kind of questions to the doctor. Are you giving him is he wearing proper clothes according to the weather? Okay, so if it is very cold, give him proper tweed, that is no woolen clothes. If it is not so cold, give him cotton type of coats. Okay, I hope he is wearing proper type of clothes. But I was able to tell her that the little fellow was out of danger and convulsing rapidly. Okay, convulsing rapidly means he was recovering rapidly. So there was only one answer that was given by the doctor, and that was Tricky was out of danger and he was convalescing, that is, he was recovering rapidly very quickly. The word convalescing seemed to do something to Mrs. Pomfrey. When Mrs. Pomfrey heard this word convalescing, means he was recovering, suddenly something happened to her. And what she did, she started to bring round fresh eggs, 2 dozen at a time, to build up Tricky's strength. Okay, so whenever any person came from Tricky's home, okay, Mrs. Pomfrey was not coming, but anytime any of the maid or staff member came from Tricky's place or Mrs. Pomfrey's place, they used to bring 2 dozens of eggs each time. Okay, if they have come today, they will bring 2 dozens of eggs, means 24 eggs. If they come after 2 days, again they will bring 24 eggs. Why these eggs were sent? So that these eggs are given to Tricky and Tricky should become healthy, he should become strong. Now, these are the things which had made or brought Tricky to this level. But still, Mrs. Humphrey is not understanding anything. She is sending eatables, she is sending all different kinds of food that can boost the immunity of Ricky. But this is not what Ricky actually needed. See next. For a happy period, my partners and I had 2 eggs each for breakfast. Now, if eggs are being brought, have been here by Mrs. Comfrey, and they are not giving any of that, any egg to Tricky, who is gonna eat it? Obviously, the doctor and his partners. So all of them used to have 2 eggs each for breakfast. Okay, when they said for breakfast, all of them had 2 eggs with them. But when the bottles of wine began to arrive, the real possibilities of the situation began to dawn on the household. Now, what was the next thing that arrived from Mrs. Pumphrey's house? Bottles of wine. Now, these bottles of wine were not for the doctor and his partners, but bottles of wine were for whom? They were for Tricky. Can you imagine? This dog has been given wine by the mistress, and then real possibility of the situation began to down on the household. That means real possibilities, what is actually happening, what could have been happening in Mrs. Pumphrey's house, what kind of food she had been giving to Tricky, all these things were now visible in front of them. Now doctor came to know how the situation is. See next paragraph. It was to enrich Tricky's blood. They say, no, wine is good for our blood. So wine was sent by Mrs. Pumphrey just to enrich Tricky's blood, to make Tricky's blood quite good, quite clean, and to have blood of good quality, to enrich the blood, to increase the blood level. Lunch became a ceremonial occasion. Ceremonial occasion means an occasion which is related to any kind of ceremony. It could be a birthday party, it could be a name giving ceremony, it could be a marriage, it could be an engagement. So, whenever there are such kind of events, whenever there are such kind of ceremonies, on such occasions only, usually we find that such good food is served, and that good food is served every day to the doctor and his partners, and with 2 glasses of wine before and several during the meal. So they were already having eggs, but apart from eggs, they were also having 2 glasses of wine. And these glasses of wine were given, or they used to take before the meal, and also some of them during the meals. So instead of giving wine to Tricky, this wine was had, or it was gulped by doctor and his partners. So they were enjoying the life that they were leading right now, and actually this life was meant for Tricky, but then all the advantages were taken by other people who were available at the surgery. Moving to next. The next thing happened, which was unbelievable, and that was here. We could hardly believe it when the brandy came to put a final edge on Tricky's constitution. So after eggs, there was wine, and now there was brandy that came to the house of doctor for Tricky's constitution. Tricky's constitution here means Tricky's entire list of diet, and to give it a final edge means to complete it at the end. All the food that was given to complete it at the end, one thing was given, and that was the brandy. For a few nights, the fine spirit was rolled around, inhaled, and reverently drunk. Okay, this fine spirit means they are talking about brandy. So for a few nights, this brandy was rolled around. Okay, so it was kept from one place to another, and they were inhaling the brandy. Okay, just sniffing that what kind of brandy it is, and finally reverently drunk. Reverently means respectfully. So after eggs, then wine, and after wine there is brandy. That brandy was also respectfully drank by the writer, narrator, the doctor, and his partners. They were deep days of deep content. Content means satisfaction. Why these days were of content satisfaction? Because all the people available at the surgery were having a very good time, enjoying the best meal that they could have, and this kind of meals they cannot even afford. And such kind of meals they only have during some ceremonial occasions. So they were days of deep content, starting well with extra egg in the morning. So it was meant for the diet of Tricky, but it has become diet of other people who are there in the surgery. So what was the diet? That it began with extra egg in the morning. All of them had one extra egg in the morning, improved and sustained by the midway wine. Okay, that means when it is half a day, they used to have their food and they had wine with it. And finishing luxuriously means at the end of the day, during the dinner time, they finished their day luxurious round of meal luxurious meal round the fire with the brandy. Okay, so fire was put on. All of them sat around the fire like as if they were having luxurious life. And to this luxurious life, one thing was added, and that is the brandy. So in the morning they had eggs, in the noon time they had wine, and at night they passed their time by having a brandy. It was a temptation to keep Ricky on as a permanent guest. Okay? So people who are there in the surgery were so happy that just because Ricky is here, we are getting so much of delicacies, we are getting so much of food and expensive things to eat. So it will be like a temptation. Okay, temptation is they are attracted to keep Tricky on as a permanent guest. So they are saying, can't we keep him permanently over here? Because if Tricky stays over here, we will be getting so much of food and drinks to have. But I knew Mrs. Comfrey was suffering, and after a fortnight felt compelled to phone and tell her that the little dog had recovered and was awaiting collection. These things are on one side, but we know very well, the writer knew very well that Mrs. Comfrey was suffering. She was very sad without Ricky. And when fortnight was over, as promised, that in fortnight he would bring Ricky back or he would keep Ricky for a fortnight. So after fortnight, after almost 15 days, the writer was compelled to phone. Okay, he was forced to phone. Why he was forced to phone? Because he was also enjoying things that were coming from Mrs. Comfrey's house. But it is time now to send Ricky back. So he called Mrs. Comfrey and said that the little dog had recovered. Okay, he has recovered now. He is completely well and awaiting collection. Awaiting collection means Ricky is waiting so that you can come and collect him. His phone was done, and within minutes, about 30 feet of gleaming black metal drew up outside the surgery. Gleaming black metal means shining black metal. And what was it? That was a car. Okay, a car that was 30 feet long. It was shining with black metal. So, black metal car came outside the surgery of Miss Dr. Harriet within minutes. Okay, so you can imagine Mrs. Comfrey was so eager to meet Ricky. The chauffeur opened the door. Chauffeur is a driver. Okay, so driver opened the door of the car, drew up outside the, and I could just make out the figure of Mrs. Comfrey almost lost in the interior. So Mrs. Comfrey was where she was in the interior means she was inside the car, and from far away, doctor was able to see. Okay, Mrs. Comfrey is there. I could see her figure means I could see her appearance, her body, that she is inside the car, she is in the interior of car. Her hands were tightly clasped in front of her. Her lips trembled. Okay, so when doctor went out, Mrs. Pumphrey had her hands clasped in front of her. Clasped means to join like this. And her lips were trembling. Okay, she was really nervous. She was so excited also to meet Ricky after a long time. So she asked, "Oh, Mr. Harrier, do tell me the truth. Is he really better? Tell me quickly, or tell me whatever is true. Tell me, is he really better? Is he all right? Is he fine?" What was the reply of Dr. Harrier? "Yes, he's fine. There's no need for you to get out of the car. I'll go and fetch him. Okay, he's completely fine, and you don't need to come out of the car. I will go and fetch him. I will go and bring him here." I walked through the house into the garden. Okay, so Dr. Harriet went inside the house, and from house he went into the garden. A mass of dogs was hurtling round and round the lawn, and in their midst, ears flapping, tail waving, was the little golden figure of Tricky. So there was mass of dogs. There were so many dogs over there, and all these dogs were hurtling around, moving here and there, jumping on each other, making so much of noise. All these dogs were where in the lawn, okay, outside in the garden. And in their midst, means in their middle, there was a little golden colored figure of whom? Of Tricky. And what was happening? Tricky's ears were flapping because he was running fast, so ears were moving upside down. His tail was waving, his tail was also moving. So among all these mass of dogs, there was this little figure of golden color which was of Tricky. In 2 weeks, he had been transformed into a lithe, that is flexible. Okay, in 2 weeks, Ricky has become so flexible, hard muscled animal. First, he was pampered so much that he never bothered or never tried to do something that requires efforts. But now his muscles have become hard. He could jump very high, he could run very fast, so his muscles have improved. He was keeping up well with the pack. He was keeping up well with the pack. Pack again means group of other dogs. So he was keeping up well means he was doing well. He has become part of that pack group of dogs. Stretching out in great bounds. Stretching out in great bounds means he was able to jump and run a lot to the great bounds, to the huge heights also. His chest almost brushing the ground. Okay, when he ran so fast that his chest was touching the ground. Okay, brushing the ground means he was touching and moving on the ground. I carried him back along the passage to the front of the house. Okay, so he was taken from the passage. Okay. Doctor went from the house to the garden, and from the passage, he was brought back to the front of the house. The chauffeur was still holding the car door open. Okay, chauffeur was there, driver was there, and he has opened the door and he was standing over there. And when Tricky saw his mistress, he took off from my arms in a tremendous leap and sailed into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. Okay, so as soon as Tricky saw that my mistress has come, he jumped off from the lap of doctor, and that was a tremendous leap. Leap means jump, and that jump was very tremendous, outstanding. And he sailed means he went very quickly and smoothly where into Mrs. Pumphrey's lap. She gave a startle. Okay, she gave a startle means she was surprised, and she said, "Oh," and then had to defend herself as he swarmed over her, licking her face and barking. She had to defend herself, means she has to save herself. Why? Because Tricky was so happy to see his mistress that he swarmed over her. Swarmed over her means he started revolving over her, no, going this side on the shoulder, going that side on the body. Okay, he was all around, and he was licking her face. Okay, so he was running his tongue over the face of mistress, and he was also barking. So in short, Ricky was showing his excitement, and with this excitement, one could easily see how good he has recovered. When he was brought over here to the surgery, he was not even wagging his tail. He was not even moving his tail. He was kept there, and he was sitting there for 2 days at the same place. But now, after 14 days, he's jumping, he's leaking, he's barking, he's making all kind of noise. During the excitement, I helped the chauffeur to bring out the beds. Okay, the excitement was going on between Mrs. Pumphrey and Ricky. So during that time, doctor called the chauffeur, "You come with me for what? To bring out the beds, toys, cushions, coats, and bowls." Okay, all these things of Ricky were brought over here. So you come and you take help me to take all these things, none of which had been used. See, these things were brought over here just for the name's sake, but these things were not used at all. As the car moved away, Mrs. Pumphrey leaned out of the window. Tears shone in her eyes. Her lips trembled. Okay, so when car almost began or it started to go, at that time Mrs. Pumphrey leaned out of the window. Okay, so there is a window. She put her face out of the window and she looked at the doctor, and her eyes were shining. Why eyes were shining? Because she was very happy and happiness could be witnessed in her eyes. Her lips trembled. Okay, her lips were trembling. They were moving, or you can say they were in great form of shaking, just because she was so excited. And she said, "Oh, Mr. Harriet," she cried, "how can I ever thank you? How can I ever thank you means मैं तुम्हारा शुक्रिया अदा कैसे करूं? This is a triumph of surgery. Okay, triumph means to win. Okay, triumph means to win. So this is a triumph of surgery means whatever surgery you have performed on Tricky, that was a triumph means that that surgery has been a winning, or that surgery was successful. So see, when she goes, she thinks as if Mr. Harriet has performed a surgery on him. He has operated Tricky. It was not so. Tricky was not given a single medicine. He has recovered on his own. But then also this lady does not understand, and she tells that whatever surgery you have done, it has been successful. That means it is a triumph of surgery, a surgery that has won. Okay, so here ends our chapter. In case you have any doubts, you can feel free to ask me later on. So go through the chapter again, look at the video nicely, look at each and every words that have been used over here. So, okay, have a nice time.